Picture a Tomahawk cruise missile, 18 feet long, flying at nearly 550 miles per hour, able to strike a target over 1,000 miles away with surgical precision. It is one of the most advanced weapons ever built, the tip of the spear of American military power. When you look at it, you see steel, explosives, jet fuel, electronics, but you are missing the most important component. Hidden inside the guidance system, the wiring, the thermal controls, and the specialized batteries is roughly 15 kilograms of silver over 500 ounces. At today's prices, that silver is worth maybe $30,000 to $40,000 inside a missile that costs over $2 million. A rounding error. And yet, without that silver, the missile does not fly. The guidance system goes blind. The battery fails to start the engine. The weapon is useless. Silver is not decoration. It is not optional. It is mission critical. That is the first reality you need to understand. For the last 80 years, the United States has fought wars under one dangerous assumption: that materials would always be available. That supply was infinite. That if we needed more ships, planes, or missiles, we could always build them. That assumption is now collapsing. Because today, the United States government holds 0 ounces of silver in its national defense stockpile. 0. And at the same time, we are in a global arms race with nations that have been hoarding silver for decades. This is not speculation. It is documented. In this investigation, we are going to expose the Pentagon's silver crisis. We will show you the official records proving the stockpile is empty. We will explain why modern warfare, from satellites to drones to torpedoes, is impossible without silver. And we will examine what happens when the Department of Defense realizes it cannot buy what it needs on the open market. They will not bid for it. They will take it. To understand why silver matters so much, you have to understand the physics. Silver is the best conductor of electricity and heat known to man. No metal moves electrons more efficiently. No metal dissipates heat more reliably. No metal creates more stable electrical contact. In a toaster, copper is fine. If the signal degrades, nobody dies. But in a fighter jet at Mach 2 or a satellite in orbit, failure is not an option. You need the path of least resistance. You need reliability under extreme heat, vibration, and radiation. You need a metal that does not corrode, spark, or fail. That metal is silver. Modern warfare is no longer steel and fire. It is electrons and precision. Silver zinc batteries power missiles, drones, and torpedoes. Jet engines use silver-plated bearings to prevent catastrophic seizure. Satellites use silver in solar panels, connectors, and thermal systems. Military communications rely on silver-coated RF components. A World War II tank used very little silver. A modern Abrams tank is a computer on tracks, and it is full of it. We digitized warfare. And by doing so, we tethered national security to a precious metal. So here is the question: if silver is this critical, surely the United States kept a massive stockpile. Once upon a time, that was true. Once upon a time, the United States did keep a massive silver reserve. In the 1940s and 1950s, America held over 3 billion ounces of silver, the largest stockpile ever assembled. It backed the currency. It powered the Manhattan Project. It was treated as a strategic weapon. Then we got comfortable. In the 1960s, silver was removed from U.S. coinage. Policymakers looked at the vaults and made a fatal mistake. They believed money was now digital, war was now nuclear, and silver was obsolete. So they started selling. For decades, the U.S. government dumped silver onto the market. Auctions, commemorative coins, fire sale disposals. They didn't just sell silver. They subsidized its price, flooding global markets with America's inheritance. By the early 2000s, the truth quietly emerged. According to the Defense Logistics Agency, the national defense stockpile of silver was effectively zero. The last bars were sold. The vaults were closed. Today, the U.S. government owns virtually no silver. When the U.S. Mint needs metal for silver eagles, it buys blanks on the open market. When defense contractors need silver for missiles or satellites, they buy it from commercial banks. We went from being the world's largest holder to having no buffer at all. And then we made it worse. For the last 30 years, the Pentagon adopted a corporate strategy called just-in-time logistics. The assumption was simple. The global market will always function. If we need silver, we issue a purchase order and it shows up. That works in peacetime. It fails catastrophically in a resource war. Today, the commercial sector is consuming nearly all available silver, electronics, solar panels, EVs, AI infrastructure. When a defense contractor tries to buy silver, they are now competing with Apple, Samsung, and Tesla. But defense contractors move slowly. They operate under fixed-price contracts. If silver doubles, they lose money on the weapon, so they delay. They wait for price dips, and while they wait, inventory disappears. Lead times for military-grade silver components are stretching from weeks into months. Weapons deliveries are slipping. The official explanation is supply chain issues. Translation: we can't get the metal. This is when the government stops pretending the market will fix it. In February 2021, the White House issued Executive Order 14,017, titled America's Supply Chains. It sounds boring. It isn't. It is a confession. The order mandated a review of critical materials required for national security. When the reports came back, the conclusion was blunt. The United States is dangerously dependent on foreign sources for strategic materials. Silver is not named loudly, but it sits at the center of everything. You can secure lithium, but without silver contacts, batteries fail. You can secure silicon, but without silver bonding wires, chips are useless. This order marked a shift. The government stopped trusting the free market. They began mapping mines, refiners, and supply choke points, and they dusted off an old law. The Defense Production Act of 1950, passed during the Korean War. It gives the president sweeping power to control industrial output in a national emergency. Under the DPA, the government can prioritize and allocate materials for defense regardless of price or private contracts. Here's how it works. A refinery receives an order to supply silver for missile production. That order carries a DX rating, the highest national priority. If Apple was next in line, Apple waits. If the U.S. Mint was next in line, it waits. If a private investor had an order, it is canceled. Ignoring a DX order is a crime. This is not confiscation at your front door. It is confiscation at the source. The tap gets shut off upstream. Retail dries up. Premiums explode. There may be silver, but it is no longer for you. This is how governments take control of resources quietly. And once this mechanism activates, it doesn't turn off. There is one fatal flaw in the Pentagon's plan. The Defense Production Act stops at the border. The president can order a refinery in Ohio to prioritize missile production. He cannot order a mine in Mexico to dig faster. He cannot force Peru to ship silver to New York instead of Shanghai. And he certainly cannot command a Chinese-owned mine to supply the U.S. Navy. Here is the hard truth. The United States consumes far more silver than it produces. We import nearly 80% of the silver we use. That means the most advanced military on Earth is dependent on foreign dirt. For decades, Washington assumed free trade meant secure trade. That assumption is breaking down. Because in a resource-constrained world, money loses its power. You cannot print silver. This is why the State Department launched what is essentially a mineral NATO, an alliance meant to secure supply chains outside of China and Russia. On paper, it looks strong. In reality, it's a club of consumers. The countries with the silver, Mexico, Peru, Bolivia, are not fully aligned. And that brings us to the most dangerous pressure point in the entire system: Mexico. Mexico produces roughly 25% of the world's silver. It is the Saudi Arabia of the metal. For centuries, that silver has flowed north, but political winds are shifting. Mexico has already nationalized lithium. They've restricted mining permits. They've raised royalties and taxes. Now imagine this scenario. Silver hits $80 an ounce. The Mexican government looks at foreign mining companies extracting billions in profit, and they decide, enough. They impose an export restriction, or a windfall tax, or a requirement that silver be refined and used domestically first. The flow nor slows or stops. At that moment, the U.S. defense supply chain breaks. Canada cannot replace the volume. Europe is too far and geopolitically fragile. China already controls much of South American processing through long-term ownership and offtake agreements, which means the metal exists, but it is no longer accessible. History tells us what happens next. When a superpower requires a resource for survival and cannot buy it, it stops asking. Oil in Iran, copper in Chile, strategic minerals throughout the Cold War. Access to resources becomes national security. National security justifies force. This adds a war premium to silver that markets are not pricing. Because silver is no longer just supply and demand. It is logistics. It is alliances. It is control of territory. And that leaves the United States with only one real solution: rebuild the stockpile, quietly, relentlessly, at any price. Military analysts estimate a minimum 3-year buffer is required. That's roughly 100 million ounces just for defense systems. If energy transition is included as national security, the number approaches 500 million ounces. There is no scenario where that amount can be bought openly. So the buying must be slow, steady, invisible. This is where the concept of the infinite bid appears. The government has unlimited dollars. Silver has finite supply. When an entity with infinite money chases a finite asset, the price has no ceiling. If silver is $50, they buy. If it's $100, they buy. If it's $300, they buy. Missiles are not optional. This buyer does not care about charts. They do not care about volatility. They care about filling the vault. And once that buyer is active, civilians are crowded out. Refiners prioritize defense. The U.S. Mint suspends coin sales. Retail inventories vanish. The official price becomes meaningless. The real price is whatever someone is willing to part with metal for. This is the lockout phase. So here is the final conclusion. Silver is not a trade. It is not a speculation. It is a strategic necessity. The United States sold its stockpile. Its adversaries did not. Now the empire must buy it back at any cost. You are holding the asset the war machine cannot function without. The Pentagon is slow, but when it moves, it does not stop. The physics of war demands silver, and physics always wins.